It was a dark and stormy night, pins and needles down your spine.
So, zombie western, right? I mean, horror loves mashups. Horror comedy, horror sci-fi, horror cop procedural, horror action. Rotten Tomatoes calls From Dusk Till Dawn a pulp crime vampire movie, and a Wikipedia genre for the movie is almost 6 words long. So why not westerns? But classic westerns have very clear rules based on absolute morals. The good guy wears white, the bad guy wears black, and the good guy is often a lawman or some other moral authority. Townsfolk are scared, so the good guy fights the bad guy alone. He wins, rides off, morality winning the day. Yeah, there are variations, but the premise is always that the conflict is a test of the good guy's virtue, which he passes, reaffirming his good guyness. Zombie movies, though, are about moral gray area. The entire genre is built on stories exploring the worst of humanity. What would we do to each other in the depths of self-centered us versus them paranoia if there was no reason not to do anything? The good and virtuous are forced to compromise their principles or die, and there are often human antagonists that have completely given in to their darker impulses because zombies basically allow them to do whatever they want. A sacrifice usually saves the day, as the remaining characters escape to an ambiguous fate in post-apocalyptia, and that's usually the best case. So how does Revelation Trail handle themes that seem like such opposites of each other? Mostly like a zombie movie in a cowboy outfit, but they do borrow symbols and archetypes of the classic western here and there. You could almost view this movie as the origin story for this man-with-no-name-esque preacher. He starts off as a frontier pastor with a wife and son and is sort of forced to redefine himself as this zombie-killing badass preacher man.
What's your name? Yeah. I thought you might say that.
Throughout the movie, even deep into post-apocalyptia, he never backs away from his sense of duty as a man of God. He's got this unwavering loyalty and moral compass that in a zombie movie normally pegs you as dead meat, but in this movie is actually how he makes it out. He's also got some very surprising gun and melee combat skills, and no one ever calls him anything but preacher. That said, I wish the movie has been more focused on that because it's the most entertaining plot in there, and it feels spread way too thin between unconnected scenes and a lot of lengthy monologues. There's more of a sense of things happening to the characters rather than any sort of escalating adventure. The characters are pretty interesting, but they tend to have defining monologues rather than seeing their traits and ideologies through their actions and dialogue throughout the movie. The Western morals it brings in give it a really unique thematic landscape and avoids the annoyingly common trope that humanity is the real monster. The only major human villain is the despotic Samuel Beard, who does relish his position of power and absolutely imposes his will on others, but even then, he's not malicious, he's just callous. Compare him to the preacher who buries zombies because only God can judge them, but until then they deserve a proper burial. And by the end of the movie, he's gathered people to him because he's so committed to that ideal. According to this movie, we're not the villains and we don't have to be evil to survive, we just have to be good to others and have faith. Structurally, the movie kind of messes up its opening hook with this weird double opening, which lost me for a good 10 minutes. With a bit of recutting, it probably would have worked amazingly, but as it stands, it feels like the movie has 2 opening scenes, which leads to one scene feeling tacked on and the other feeling repetitive. So the film starts with a cold open, which is really provocative, cutting between preacher giving a sermon and a rape family assault scene. This opening was written after the majority of the script, but before production began, in order to create a bridge between the feature and a short animated web series on YouTube called Lilith's Story. The web series was created mostly as flavor to establish an expanded universe for the film and generate interest, but it also introduces the Reynolds family and brothers Jacob and Isaiah Bannon. This intro also does a really good job of introducing a lot of themes and motifs for the movie, like resurrection, depravity, religion versus morality. Also, if you saw the web series, you know that the zombie that attacks Jacob is Mr. Reynolds, possibly getting revenge for his family. Movie zombies are often a stand-in for some other sort of cultural trend or boogeyman, and there are several references in this movie to zombies representing either prejudice or vigilante justice. It's really tightly done, but then there's this odd disconnect between that opening and the rest of the movie. After the credits fade, we jump forward in time to where Preacher delivers another really similar monologue to the sermon we just heard, but this time at a saloon with scars on his face to set up that the rest of the movie will be flashback. Then it jumps right back to where the cold open left off and continues. It's like narrative whiplash. From the technical side, the movie's gosh darn pretty to look at most of the time. Given time and budget, they managed to put together some really impressive scenic shots and nighttime action sequences, which really are the highlights of the movie for me. But there's this huge technical failing in the muddy sound mix.
Nothing could be said.
Between the ambient soundtrack and the insects and other nature noises due to the location shooting, there's a lot of noise in there to drown out the actors' voices, which contributes to the feeling of flatness I complained about with the story. Wrapping this up, Revelation Trail has some interesting characters with a lot of depth and very good dynamics. It explores some different themes than most other zombie entries and has a pretty unique setting, lending to a few really fun set pieces. Unfortunately, the pace is dragged down by lengthy monologues as characterization and hard-to-hear speech. This leads to the story feeling more like characters meandering from event to event, rather than a narrative evolving from a beginning to a middle to an end. That said, I've seen the movie probably about 10 times at this point, and that doesn't really upset me at all. It's not terribly put together, and especially impressive as a director's first feature film. There are a few high points, and it's nice to have a zombie horror entry that's a little bit different. If you can get past some of the structural shakiness and deal with the monologues, there are really some nuggets in there. Anyway, thanks for checking out some modern horror, subscribe below, and I'll see you later, partner.
Thank you.